Aha! Hello. Apologies. Had the same issue with my camera. And I thought, you know what, I'll actually try and fix it this time around rather than yesterday where I had to swap the cameras around again. But we're there. I think we're good. Camera is in. Camera is on. I think we're live. I think I can hear it. We should be all good. Hello, everybody. How are we doing? How are we feeling? Sprint race, double trouble today. Sprint race, and then, of course, the full qualifying for the Grand Prix tomorrow. Oh, am I peaking really heavily? Let me change my compressor output gain. Let's turn that right down to like 0. Yeah. Still peaking. Why is it peaking? Now I have audio issues. Everything I do, I break. I don't know how I do it. There we go. I think that's better. Maybe. How are we feeling? Who has pole? Lando Norris, indeed. Kimi Antonelli just behind. Piastri. Max Verstappen starting in 6th. Which we'll get to momentarily. Just making sure that this audio isn't insanely loud. Let me turn it down a little bit more. Maybe if I bump it down. There we go. I was actually listening to the podcast with Max Verstappen and Gabriel Bortoleto earlier on today, and they were talking about building up to the Grand Prix, their thoughts and feelings on it. Well worth a listen if you haven't listened to it, I would say. Hope we have rain. It's well, it was raining earlier. I saw people like lining up to get into the grandstands. They were all in their ponchos, but I think it has dried up a touch since then. Should I study for my chemistry practical that's on Monday or watch the stream? I mean, both. We can do some chemistry together. Depends what the chemistry practical is. I did teach a little bit of chemistry back in the day. Not very much of it, though. But I can give it my best. Is it raining during the sprint? I think it's supposed to rain like 20 minutes after the sprint finishes, which is like really frustrating, isn't it? Like if you could pick a time for it to rain, 20 minutes after the sprint is not the one. I want it bang on in the middle of the Grand Prix, or in the middle of the sprint, I should say. Do I think Hamilton will get a podium in 2025? It's not looking good for Ferrari this weekend. I thought, you know, of the weekends left, this might be the one. Maybe Vegas. They were pretty decent in Vegas last time around. Got to remember, Carlos Sainz was on the podium. We then also had... Charles Leclerc finished 4th, didn't he? Carlos Sainz was on the podium last year in Vegas. So never say never. But it's going to be pretty tough for Lewis Hamilton to get a podium. I don't think it's going to happen in Qatar or Abu Dhabi. Let's say that. Although Ferrari were pretty decent in Abu Dhabi last year. But again, Ferrari were just pretty decent at the end of last year. So it's tricky to kind of say that. If you look at their form this year compared to last year going into the final half of the season, it's not quite the same, is it? When does it start? We're about 45 minutes out from the start, but I just wanted to check a couple of things because yesterday we had some technical difficulties. So wanted to come on a bit early and just double check things were actually working and have a chat with you guys. We didn't get to really build up to qualifying yesterday. It was more of a jump on and jump straight in to qualifying yesterday, as opposed to settling into it. Do I think Max can win? again, just going off the history of it, yes, but I think he's going to need a couple of things to go in his favour. We've seen Kimi Antonelli wipe out a couple of drivers this year. He smashed into Max in Austin, hit Charles Leclerc in Zandvoort. Maybe Kimi Antonelli could do Norris and Piastri a favour, taking out Lando in this one. Am I in college or is it full-time F1? Neither of those things. Thanks for thinking that I'm still college age. I am not college age. I finished college a long time ago. What are my thoughts on the Buda International Circuit? Would you like it to come back onto the current calendar? It's a decent circuit, to be fair. Who was it? I did a podcast, or I have a podcast called the Crash Happy Podcast, where we literally talked about sort of old circuits and how we felt about our dream calendars. It was me, Mr. V, Dan No Skill, Mr. Pulse, and Formula Duck. We kind of built out this pretend 10-track personal favorites calendar / best possible calendar. And I think it was Pulse that had the Buda International Circuit on it. Or am I thinking wrong? Oh, no, he had Istanbul. That's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Istanbul, which is not anywhere close. I don't know why those wires got crossed in my brain, but they did. When did I start watching F1? About 2008, 2009, around that time. I was a very young boy. What's my favorite circuit? It's on the wall. Pretty easy one. Shall we talk about the championship then? If you haven't seen it, I released a video a couple of days ago now where we discussed the likelihood of Max Verstappen being able to actually hold on in the championship. And I went through your guys' opinions on who will finish where in the final 6 races of the season using this lovely tracker from racingstatisticsf1.com. Not a sponsor, but they make incredible stuff over there, and I actually use quite a lot of their sort of detailed analysis bits and pieces for my videos. So if they do want to sponsor us, that'd be very nice. But in terms of the championship tracker then, they've built this here where you can put your scores in for the final 6 races of the season and compare as to where you think each of the drivers will finish, and therefore how the championship will end. Why is this being weird? Let me reset this. There we go. How the championship will end. So, like, we can look at this championship tracker and almost put together our final few races. I think for me, it just kind of made me realize how tough it still is for Max Verstappen, being 36 points adrift of Lando Norris. You know, you say, oh, a 9-point swing per weekend. A 9-point swing is a huge swing. Like, that means that Max Verstappen has to basically win the Grand Prix and Lando Norris has to come third. And not only that, he can't really have Piastri coming in second because he also needs a 35-point swing to Oscar Piastri as well. So I kind of didn't quite realize. I think because we had the incident between the two McLarens in Austin, a lot of people were like, oh, that's the big moment where Max Verstappen kind of got 8 points where the McLarens got 0. Actually, like, he could have done with that being in the race by a considerable margin. Because, like, even if Verstappen, let's give Verstappen an extra 25 points. So even if I give him a win in the Brazilian race and give absolutely nothing to the two McLarens, he is still 10 points adrift of Piastri, 11 points adrift of Norris. And even that is still quite a big swing to do in one weekend. So 9 points per weekend when he needs that victory is really tough. But if we're going off of how they line up today, so Piastri P3, Max Verstappen starting P6. I don't think he'll finish there, but he is starting P6. If we look at how that would change the standings for now, it would be Lando Norris 365. Oscar Piastri drops down a little bit further from his teammate, 362. Verstappen then 43 points adrift. 41 points adrift of Lando Norris. And I think 40, like if it gets above the 40 mark, I think it is over for Verstappen. 36 is still a huge swing. If it goes to over 40, it is done and dusted for Max Verstappen. Even if, as I said, even if he then goes on to win the race and McLaren have a double DNF, he'll still be 16 points adrift of Lando Norris with 3 race weekends to go. And we're all kind of assuming that the US is going to be pretty tough. We're assuming that Qatar is going to be kind of 50-50. I know Norris was very quick there last year, had that penalty though. We had Piastri was also very quick. Max Verstappen went on to win that one, but should have really been Lando Norris in the race. And then finally in Abu Dhabi, we know that the McLarens had the benefit of it last time around as well. So it's like really tricky for Max Verstappen from this point forwards. I know he's closed the gap an incredible amount, but as I say, even with Verstappen getting P1 here, say the sprint finishes as it is, so P1 for Norris, P3 for Piastri, P6 for Verstappen, and then we give Verstappen the win tomorrow, and out of the points for Piastri and Norris, still a big gap to make up. Like, even if Verstappen, let's say in the US, I think that the Mercedes cars are going to be the quicker. So let's say Verstappen manages to grab a P2, Piastri maybe gets a P5, and Lando Norris a P4. Verstappen still 10 points adrift of Lando Norris. And then you go into the Qatar sprint weekend, where, as I say, anything can happen. But that's with a double DNF for McLaren. Max Verstappen would still be behind by 10 points going into the final 2 races. It's going to be tough for Max Verstappen. It's going to be really, really tough. But if you want to know who you guys predicted, over 17,000 people put in their predictions for who they thought would be the championship winner. I was going to say it was quite a mixed bag, but I took the average of everybody, taking out a few of the people who just put, look, the entire 18 results would be all of them finishing outside of the points every single time, because it's clearly not going to happen. But taking that, putting everybody's predictions in, and actually you guys picked your 2025 world champion. I won't spoil it though. I'll let you click the link in the description down below. Watch that video if you haven't watched it already. But I'm very much looking forward to this. And as I say, racing statistics, well worth it. Like, I use a lot of these kind of race by race comparisons with the Mexico Grand Prix. It was very, very interesting to see the lap time differences. They got so much stuff on here that is so good and well worth checking out. I really like this one as well, where you can compare which drivers are where in the Drivers' Championship compared to the Constructors' Championship. And you can kind of see where all of those points are coming from. Bless Franco Colapinto not being part of this overall, but you can just see like the difference between Ferrari having 2 strong drivers versus Kimi Antonelli in his rookie season, for instance, and the gap that is between Russell and Antonelli in terms of the overall points for the team, and therefore the reasoning as to why Ferrari, even though I would say the Mercedes car has been by far and away the better car of the two compared to the Ferrari for the majority of races this season, still slots into 3rd place in the Constructors' Championship. And then same with Verstappen. Like, you look at Verstappen's points total compared to his teammate Yuki Tsunoda all the way down here. This tiny little slither of blue that comes up towards the Red Bull points overall. It's pretty damning if you're a Yuki Tsunoda fan, isn't it? The difference between those two. But yeah, as I say, well worth kind of checking out racing statistics. Very, very much a website that I would recommend. Shall we have a little chat about the championship as well then? As I say, Lando Norris still leading it. Piastri, Verstappen behind. We've talked about those 3 though. There's some other battles still to play out. Alex Albon still leading the way in the midfield. But I think that kind of race for 6th place in the Constructors' Championship is certainly still up for grabs. And actually a very interesting one. It does seem to change hands almost weekend to weekend, doesn't it, as to who's the best midfield car. I know Williams have kind of locked themselves into that position. Like, they deserve it. They did really well earlier on in the season, and they stopped developing to try and focus on the 2026 car. And all to them, like, they deserve to do that. That is very much something they can do. But that battle for 6th place, like, will it be Racing Bulls? Sometimes they look like the best car. Isaac Hadjar again qualifying in the top 10 for the sprint here, but then once he got onto the soft compound tires, he said it was a little bit trickier. So maybe actually going into the full qualifying later on today, we'll see it switch hands. Aston Martin only 3 points behind. They seem to have very on and off weekends, don't they, Aston Martin? They certainly are still in the running for 6th place. Haas have entered it. Stake Sauber are certainly in there. Like, I don't think 12 points is completely out of the question, when actually we've seen a very, very competitive midfield this year, where we've seen lots and lots of guys slotting into the podium places. I think it's all up for grabs when it comes to 6th place in the constructors. Williams have just about done enough, unless somebody gets like a mental Alpine result here this year. A double podium for like Racing Bulls. Would that even put them touching distance? It'd be 33 points. I mean, it would put them on 105. So it'd be 6 points adrift of Williams with 3 to go. That's how good Williams have been this season, by the way. Even if Racing Bulls, their next best component, got a double podium here in Brazil, which would be absolutely insane. You know, remember back to when Alpine did it last year. It was not an expected thing to happen. Like, Williams would still be ahead, and they'd still have a 6-point gap, which is fairly comfortable at points this season. Start time, we are just about half an hour, 35 minutes, something like that way. I need to get the chat up, actually. I haven't got the chat up in front of me, like the full chat. I've just got the one from one side. Imagine Max closes on McLaren by 25 points if McLaren crashes. That's what I'm talking about, though. If you go back a little bit in the stream, even if he does do that, it's still a long way to go. It's still a pretty tricky run that Max Verstappen has towards the championship win. He needs that. Don't get me wrong. He needs a 25-point swing, or even like an 18-point swing if he finishes in 2nd place to maybe George Russell or something in Vegas. But he also needs the McLarens to have a terrible weekend and be the best car in Qatar and be the best car in Abu Dhabi. Like, he needs to be pretty much perfect in all of these last 4 race weekends that we've got. And Max Verstappen, I think, has the ability to do that. Don't get me wrong. Seen him win 10 races in a row in 2023. He can be as consistent as anybody else on the grid. But it's a different challenge when you're trying to do that under the pressure of a championship, and you're the chasing car, and you need the McLarens to falter in front of you. There's a lot of things that are out of Max Verstappen's hands when it comes to that. You love F1, you're subscribing. Thank you so much. We are nearly at 150,000 subscribers. We were aiming for, like, I think I said 150 at the beginning of the season. Can't remember now. Don't know if I'd have been that hopeful. I don't think we've ever done 50,000 subscribers in a year. That is, well, definitely haven't done 50,000 subscribers in a year. That is absolutely ridiculous. But we're certainly getting a little bit closer to it. Oh. Hang on, I've just realized that screen is incredibly bright. Let me turn down the brightness on that. Otherwise, it will make my camera look real weird. There we go. Don't think pressure will affect him any bit. Do you not? I think not so much pressure maybe then, but just the fact that there's so many things that have to go into his favor, and he has to be absolutely perfect. Like, I think maybe pressure's the wrong word, but we know Max Verstappen has a tendency to maybe, have a little bit of a meltdown inside of the car if things aren't quite going his way, or lash out at his team, or maybe even a George Russell if things are not going the absolute perfect direction that he wants throughout the Grand Prix weekend. So I don't know. I can just feel like if there's a weekend where it's not quite working for Max, I mean, it's not quite working for him so far this weekend, I think then the pressure starts to mount. And maybe it's not pressure, but more self-expectation and expectation on the team and expectation on not just Max, but Red Bull is where he might come unstuck just a tiny little bit. Confirmed it is raining in Melbourne. Good. It is not raining currently at the Brazilian Grand Prix circuit. As I say, at the moment, it's scheduled to rain like 20 minutes after the sprint race is done. So what we really need to do is sort of have some rain dances going. Maybe have some people in the chat that are wishing upon the rain. Or we need somebody at the Brazilian Grand Prix to like run onto the circuit, cause some damage to, I was going to say one of the cars, but probably not one of the cars, because then I don't think they delay it in the same way. Maybe like a tech pro barrier. We need somebody to run out onto the track, do some damage to a tech pro barrier so that they delay the start of the sprint by like 20 minutes, half an hour. And then we might get rain right at the end of the sprint. And we do need it to like absolutely team down, which it could do, because there has been severe weather warnings, I think they call it, in Brazil, where it's sort of high winds, high rain. So we just need like a big amount of rain. I'd say like 10 laps into the sprint. I don't think we want it right at the beginning of the sprint. I think we want it to shake up the order. Then we want a few laps, people go for it, and then the rain comes. Is the track wet? It was earlier on. I assume it's dry by now. It was raining earlier on, but the pictures that I saw were like a few hours ago now. So I think it stopped a little while ago. Just waiting to, can I see any tyres in the back? Oh, they cut to a replay of George Russell's flying lap to finish P4 in sprint qualifying yesterday. I was just trying to see if there was any tyres in blankets in the background, because that can always give it away. If the teams have actually bothered to wheel some intermediate tyres out onto the racetrack, it's always a good indicator. But I don't think they have. I think they are just soft and medium compound tyres that have been wheeled out there. Dry and then wet to force pit stops. Exactly. Force a pit stop. Even though the whole point of a sprint race is that they're not really supposed to pit stop, because it's only a third of a Grand Prix. But even so. I feel like he's not believing in a comeback as much as the fans are. And about the car, even if he's not fighting for anything, he will still rage on the team. Yeah, that's very true. He does just like things to go his way. Thank you, Sally. Please do leave a like on the stream. That'd be absolutely amazing. It really does help out the channel. It's completely free. You just hit that thumbs up button, and it massively, massively helps us out. Shall we talk about the qualifying positions from yesterday then, and catch people up just in case you weren't here for qualifying? Because it was quite an interesting one, and a few kind of curveballs thrown in that I think we could discuss and go through together. So first and foremost, Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda right down the bottom there. Was maybe expecting it from Carlos Sainz. You know, the Williams team was saying that the track was not going to be in their favor this weekend. You know, even Alex Albon only managed a 12th place in qualifying yesterday. Neither of the Williams cars looked very comfortable at all. Remember back to last year, this was the weekend where the Williams team decided to destroy every chassis that they had left. They went through some chassis last year at Williams, didn't they? Like Logan Sargent went for a few. Alex Albon certainly played his part as well. This year has been, I want to say a little bit better, but I still think Carlos Sainz has been through one or two. I can't think of any massive shunts Alex Albon has had off the top of my head. But actually, this is a thing. Is it just me remembering the negatives? Or is Carlos Sainz, actually, when it comes to sort of wet weather racing, a little bit sort of inconsistent? Or maybe just not quite as good as you'd expect a driver of his caliber and his experience to be? Because I'm thinking like back to the beginning of the season in Melbourne, it went wrong. Last year here in Brazil when he was at Ferrari, he crashed out. I'm just like, maybe I'm just picking and choosing, but is Carlos Sainz actually pretty bad in the wet? Just throwing it out there. Just throw it out there. I'd love to know your thoughts, because they're just the ones that come to my brain. But maybe I'm forgetting some of his absolutely incredible drives in mixed conditions or something like that. So I just like, I don't know. Maybe it's just the couple of recent ones I can think of. I can just remember Carlos Sainz finding the barriers when it's been wet weather conditions. Yuki Tsunoda down there as well. Obviously, we don't know the Red Bull car's future. Franco Colapinto's future is now confirmed, at least for 2026. Yeah, been in Canada in the wet last year as well. Yep. Albon's had the more consistent season, but Sainz had more ups than Alex. Ooh, I don't know about that. I think just because he's got that podium, maybe. You could say, yeah. But Alex Albon also has, what, 3 fifth place finishes? Something like that. Yeah, I'm trying to remember them now. I want to say 3 fifth place finishes for Alex Albon. I think they're the ups. I think Carlos Sainz just got a little bit lucky that his up was also on a weekend where nobody could really do that much overtaking, and a couple of the big boys in the McLarens also had a pretty horrendous weekend, whereas Alex Albon's good weekends have aligned with McLaren still being strong, Red Bull still being strong, or Mercedes still being strong, and things like that. 2022 Monaco and 2022 Singapore, I believe, were Sainz's good performances in the wet. Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. Yeah, maybe it's just a recent thing. Maybe it's something I'm kind of building up in my head that is a little bit more than actually in real life. He's fine in the rain. Okay. As I said, just something that came to my mind yesterday when I was thinking about the possibility of it being a wet weather race. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda down the bottom there. As I was saying, we know Franco Colapinto's locked in, so that means there's only 3 available spots on the grid for next season now. We know that Max Verstappen is going to be at Red Bull. Who is going to be alongside him, we do not know. And then the 2 sister team seats at RB also not confirmed. But they're the only drivers not to be confirmed for next year. Tsunoda, Lawson, and Hadjar. And it's sort of where they're going to be. We were told by Red Bull initially that they would be making that decision post-Mexico because they had that week between Mexico and Brazil where they could all come together and actually kind of talk about it. They then delayed that. Maybe because they've got a little bit more faith in Yuki. Maybe because they want to see a little bit more. Maybe because a couple of people couldn't make the meeting anymore. We don't know, right? We don't know why that meeting was delayed. But a 19th place start for Yuki Tsunoda, another Q1 exit. He's still got the full Grand Prix to come. Don't get me wrong. He's still got qualifying and then a full Grand Prix where he could maybe turn it around. But it's just another weekend where you're going, we needed a bit more from you, Yuki. We needed something a little bit different than the repetition of slightly underperforming almost every single time you're out on track. Pierre Gasly has also come to a stop on my live screen timer. Wondering if that is actually him coming to a stop or whether he's doing like he's doing a practice start. That's okay. So is Lance Stroll. That's fine. Disappointing for Pierre Gasly. We'll get to him in a second, actually, though. Esteban Ocon starting in 18th place, the Haas car. I mean, he was on the podium here last year, Esteban Ocon, so again, could prove us wrong when it comes to the Grand Prix, but I can't see doing very much from that position. Shame as well, because Haas was so strong last time out in Mexico. They just need to get a little bit of momentum behind them, but it feels like Aston Martin, RB are the two teams more likely to score points this weekend and therefore extend that lead in the Constructors' Championship just a little bit more. Although Liam Lawson is there down in 17th place. And as I mentioned before, Franco Colapinto, 16th place for him. Despite that brand new contract, Alpine, he was sort of saying afterwards, when he comes to these sprint weekends and he's only got one free practice session and not a lot of time in the car beforehand, he just still doesn't feel quite settled inside of that Alpine machinery. And you can understand that, like, coming in partway through the season, was it 6 races in, coming into the 7th Grand Prix of the year, you kind of miss out on the testing in Bahrain. You're not quite in the rhythm of things like everyone else is. And Franco Colapinto still struggling, the only driver yet to score points that are currently still on the grid, although you could argue that is also the Alpine car's fault. They are quite far adrift of the rest in terms of the constructor standing now, just 20 points across the entire season. Most other teams in the midfield have scored 20 points across a weekend. Like, they've not quite been able to match the rest of the midfield cars from sort of 5th place in the constructors down to 9th, have they? Ollie Behrman, his best and Haas's best finish, 4th place last time out in Mexico. Almost that Haas podium, but couldn't quite get it over the line. And they are looking at the track here. It's still drying, actually. It's not as dry as I thought it would be, the Grand Prix circuit. Interesting, though. They're looking at the grooves in the track that the Interlagos circuit designers have put into the track recently to try and drain a little bit more of that liquid off the surface of the circuit. And there is still little damp areas on the track. It's damper than I thought it was going to be, most certainly, considering the rain stopped a little while ago in Brazil. But as the cars are making their way to the circuit, well, at least Lando Norris anyway, was on the medium compound tyre, making his way around to the grid. Just over 20 minutes to go before that. So looking like medium compound tyres most likely for the racers out there. Haven't seen anyone on intermediates yet. But again, we haven't seen everybody on the radar. Gabriel Bortoletto starting 14th place. Tricky for him, right? I know he's raced here before, but not in Formula cars. So it's an awkward one because there's a lot of expectation on him to perform because it is his home Grand Prix and he'll want to perform in his first home Grand Prix. But he is in a Stakes Sauber car. It's a weekend where you only get one free practice session, and particularly for the rookies, like I said with Franco Colapinto just beforehand, when it is a sprint weekend, you only get one practice session, you haven't been to the circuit before, it is quite a lot of pressure, and it's quite a lot to sort of say to the drivers, right, you've had an hour in the car, now straight into a competitive session on the medium tyres, then switching to the soft compound tyres if you make it through to Q3. Like, it's a lot for the driver to have to do. Pierre Gasly, slightly disappointed, but I think he was more disappointed about Charles Leclerc's spin in front of him, or he would have likely been in that top 10. I think Gasly has shown his pace here in the past and actually usually does very, very well here in Brazil. Pierre Gasly usually is pretty good towards the end of the season. If you look at the last few seasons that he's had in Formula One, he just kind of find form as the season progresses. Maybe that's because the Alpine car has also been getting better, where this year it maybe hasn't. But usually, as we go into sort of the last 5, 6 races of the season, Pierre Gasly kind of clicks in. I could see him doing a lot better than 13th place come the full qualifying later, and maybe getting some points on the board for Alpine this weekend. Alex Albon starts in 12th place. Again, I think the Williams car is just kind of locked in this weekend. They just haven't got the pace. I think they're finally falling foul of the fact that even though they started the year so strong, everybody else has continued to develop their car just a little bit more than they have. Well, I mean, Williams haven't developed the car at all throughout the 2025 season. So I'm expecting Alex Albon to kind of be locked out of the point scoring places for this year, if I'm honest. I can't see him getting any more points on the board unless the Williams car like super suits one of the final 4 races and maybe someone else in the midfield has a bit of a disaster weekend. But I think Williams have finally hit that stopping point where they can't get any better. Lewis Hamilton starting in 11th place, really disappointing for him. And again, maybe I'm cherry picking, but is that like the 3rd or 4th? Maybe it's only the 2nd time. Baku was another one. And then last time out yesterday evening. But Charles Leclerc going out in front of Lewis Hamilton and making a mistake and costing Lewis Hamilton in terms of qualifying. I think that's the 2nd time that it's happened. And I don't really know, do they swap it around? I don't pay enough attention to Ferrari, if I'm honest with you. Like, they are a bit of a no man's land this season for me. I just haven't really been following what's happening at Ferrari because I just don't think that is overly interesting at this point. So, but I don't know. Do they always send Charles Leclerc out in front of Lewis Hamilton? Do they swap it around where Hamilton goes out in front of Leclerc? I think that's something to have a little look at because it does feel like Hamilton just isn't comfortable inside of that Ferrari. And maybe having to follow Charles Leclerc is not the best thing for Lewis Hamilton. Maybe he's trying to sort of copy Charles Leclerc's lines or something through the corners, but I don't know. 2nd time that I can think of where Charles Leclerc has actually cost Lewis Hamilton when it's come to qualifying. I think Max will get a podium in the sprint. Oof. I don't know. Question to everyone, and then didn't say a question. Interesting. Into the top 10 then, and remember, only the top 8 score points in the sprint. So Nico Hülkenberg, his first Q3 performance is of the entire season. I think it's his first Q3 in a very long time. He must have been in a Q3 in another sprint. Maybe. But it's his first Q3 yeah, he was in Austin, right? Started 4th. Because he was right up there with the McLarens when they crashed. But a Q3 performance from Hülkenberg. Maybe he benefits from the fact that they have to qualify on the medium compound tyre when it comes to the sprints. Because in normal qualifying, Hülkenberg has been absolutely horrendous this season. Like, he's been nowhere close to the top 10 a lot of the time. And a lot of his performances have actually come from running out from like 15th place up into the point scoring positions. Like, even his podium in Silverstone, he started way down the grid. So I don't know, Nico Hülkenberg, an interesting case there. Another little one to look at, like, why does he qualify so well for the sprints, but then when it comes to the Grand Prix, never really seems to have the same kind of consistency or the same kind of form. Isaac Hadjar just starting outside of the points in 9th place. The Frenchman still looking for that kind of best of the rest other than Alex Albon position in the championship, because I can't see him catching Alex Albon anytime soon, but already has a podium to his name. Just trying to build more of a case, right, for him to go into that Red Bull seat alongside Max Verstappen. I don't know if there's much more Isaac Hadjar could have done, considering it's his rookie season. He's been sublime in some of the race weekends we've had. I think Liam Lawson has closed the gap, certainly in this 2nd half of the year. But I still think Isaac Hadjar has shown more than enough. And Isaac Hadjar starting 9th place, ahead of his teammate once again. Maybe we'll get a little bit of an update from Red Bull this week rather than in the weekend between Brazil and Vegas, because again, we've got a week without a race. Or they'll maybe leave it to the end of the season, because like they did with the Sergio Perez decision, right? They left it until like almost Christmas before they actually made a decision whether Sergio Perez was going to stay for this season or not. Then they told us it was going to be Lawson. Lawson only got 2 races. So, like, even if they do tell us that Isaac Hadjar is moving into that main team, until he's there for like 10 races, we'll keep our powder dry. Charles Leclerc starts in 8th place. Ferrari still just not looking comfortable here this weekend. The balance of the Ferrari car It's going to be another lift and coast weekend for them, isn't it? Charles Leclerc starting in 8th place. And I know that there's 2 Aston Martins in front of him, but is Charles Leclerc really going to be able to make up much positions? I don't think so. I think it's going to be few points maybe for Charles Leclerc, a handful at the absolute maximum this weekend. Lance Stroll starts in 7th place. The Aston Martin car, again, seems to just come to life on those medium tyres. Fernando Alonso, the quickest of anybody in Q2. Couldn't quite translate that to the pace on the soft compound tyre. I think that's the fun thing about sprint qualifying, is you do have to do the different tyre compounds. Like, I'd quite like to see that in full qualifying. Maybe for Q1, you have to use the hard compound tyre. For Q2, you have to use the medium. And for Q3, you're allowed to use the soft. I think that could be quite an interesting thing for Formula One to think about, especially because they are looking at this dynamic of possibly introducing a 2-stop, like a guaranteed 2-stop for every single race. Obviously, at the moment, they have to use 2 different tyre compounds during a Grand Prix, and they have to pit at least once, because they have to use 2 different tyre compounds. They're looking at the possibility of mandating that you have to stop twice, which, I don't know, is a little bit of an odd one to me. I don't think that the number of pit stops is really the problem. It's more the variation in strategy is pretty lacking, you know. We look at last time around, for instance, or couple of races ago, when it's interesting, it's because the 1-stop and the 2-stop both work effectively, and it's you know, the margins between a 1-stop strategy and a 2-stop strategy are very, very close, and it's whether you back your driver to actually go for the 1-stop and manage their tires but still be able to get the pace over somebody who's on a 2-stop with those fresh tires and something like that. So was literally typing a comment about 2-stop, just started talking about it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I just don't think that's the problem, right? I don't think forcing more pit stops is the problem. And I don't think making 2 stops mandatory is the thing. I think it's more the fact that every single weekend we come into it and the 1-stop strategy is the only strategy. Whereas what I'd like to see is a bit of a mixture, where like a 1-stop strategy is a good choice, but a 2-stop strategy is pretty comparable. Whereas at the moment, a 1-stop strategy is the best choice. And if you go for a 2-stop strategy, you're an idiot. So it's like 1 slick compound per weekend with a mandatory 2-stopper makes the tires weak enough for 3-stoppers to be a thing. I just don't think it does, though. I think you'll just have more drivers managing tires. I think that's the other thing. You have to remember, we also want them to be able to go all out with the racing. So if you just make the tires weaker, I think instead of pitting more, they'll just manage their tires more. Because it's a lot of time to lose, like 20 plus seconds in a pit stop. Like, the teams would rather go, say the stint is like 20 laps, the teams would rather go a second slower per lap and have to pit later rather than having to do that 20 plus second stop, right? Because again, you're losing less time by just going slower compared to actually stopping and changing your tires. So it's like, how do they balance that? How do they find it? And Pirelli have a tough job, and like Formula One have a tough job, because I think Pirelli, you know, we blame them quite a lot, but they are given the regulations by Formula One, so it comes from the top and works its way down. Do I think they're actually going to show the sprint or just show Leclerc's fiance? Isn't that like a bit of a rumor? Didn't Kim Illman do a video where everyone was saying that after, was it Singapore, where everybody was saying that? And then he actually watched the race and they were on screen for like 20 seconds or something. Like, it was a very minimal amount of time. I think that's just become a little bit of a rumor that they always put the wives and girlfriends of the drivers on the screens and the families of the drivers on the screens. I don't think it happens as much as people make out that it happens, if I'm honest. Like, I've never noticed it, but I know that it's become a bit of a meme. running out of fresh tires. Yeah, that's very true. We do have, like, especially on sprint weekends like this, we will have a lot of teams running slightly scrubbed sets of tires, particularly when it comes to the Grand Prix, and starting on scrubbed sets of tires as well. My view on sprints is put a sprint race and update the layouts with a bigger space for Monaco, Singapore, and sprints to be the only there, so the races are more exciting. Sure, yeah. What do I think the odds are that Fernando Alonso wins? I mean, he was very quick on the medium tires yesterday. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm looking at the cars in front of him. It's going to be pretty handful from, or a pretty difficult handful of drivers for Fernando Alonso to get past. But never say never. Never say never. We were making our way up the grid, though, and we got detoured. Max Verstappen starting in 6th place with Fernando Alonso just ahead of him in 5th. And that's the thing, right? Fernando Alonso to win, he also needs to keep Max Verstappen behind, not just catch up to the 4 drivers in front of him. Max Verstappen will certainly have the bit between his teeth, knowing that the championship is still technically up for grabs. But it's a tricky one for Max Verstappen. This weekend, he certainly hasn't made it easy for himself starting from that low down on the grid. Still no driver radio messages coming through. And then George Russell and Oscar Piastri start on the 2nd row of the grid. I think that could be a very entertaining battle. George Russell, of course, has won here in Brazil. His debut victory in Formula One came here in Brazil. Back a couple of years ago for Mercedes. Now Oscar Piastri trying to get back into the championship fight, just 1 point behind his teammate. It's the first Grand Prix weekend since Saudi Arabia where Oscar Piastri has got into a weekend without leading the Grand Prix, leading the Drivers' Championship. So Oscar Piastri, the pressure has changed. He's now chasing rather than being chased. Will we see a bounce back from Oscar Piastri in this one? Kimi Antonelli outdoing George Russell to start in 2nd place is a very interesting one. But the Italian being able to find that little bit of extra pace in the Mercedes car. And then, of course, Lando Norris starting at the top of the timing sheets and will lead the cars at least down towards turn 1. Whether he'll still be leading out of turn 1, we'll have to wait and see. Lando Norris has just got the momentum behind him, hasn't he? If you're going to pick one of the drivers right now in that championship battle that just seems to have the momentum, seems to be able to get everything out of the car, it is Lando Norris at this point. Doesn't mean that he's winning every single time around. I know we've seen Max Verstappen pick up victories and so on. But if you think since Azerbaijan, and even Azerbaijan, maybe that just was the pace of the McLaren car. Oscar Piastri was also not very quick at all in Azerbaijan as well. And I know Lando Norris got a little bit slated for not picking up more points in Baku when it felt like a big opportunity to kind of make up ground to Oscar Piastri. But the McLaren just wasn't very quick in Azerbaijan. But since then, it does feel like Lando Norris has been the in-form McLaren driver. And then you look at last time out in Mexico where he put together possibly his best race in Formula One, maybe ever in Mexico. Was super, super dominant. Kind of went back to kind of Austria type form, Lando Norris, where he was just super quick compared to the rest. Looked really comfortable inside of that McLaren car and just made it look really, really easy compared to everybody else. If he can do that again here in this sprint, he won the sprint here last year, although he was kind of handed that victory by Oscar Piastri. And then, the rain came in the Sunday where all kind of went a little bit wrong for Lando Norris. And then subsequently, the rest of the season didn't quite work out for him, right? Vegas didn't quite go the way that he wanted it to. And the McLaren car not really suited to the Vegas Grand Prix circuit. Qatar, he picked up that penalty, finished the season with a win in Abu Dhabi, though. So Lando Norris has a little bit of momentum behind him this season and can look at his results last season and sort of take a lot of positives going into these final four races that we've got this season. looking at the weather radar, because we are now just 5 minutes out from the start of qualifying. The radio messages are starting to come through from the drivers. And in fact, if I got... Nope. I swear I used to have a... Maybe I don't. Used to have a screen where I could show the driver radio messages. Maybe I've gotten rid of that. But we're about 5 minutes away. I'm just looking at the possibility of rain. It's still looking more likely that it's going to rain once the sprint race is actually finished. So not looking like it's going to rain right this very moment. But you never know. We'll have to wait and see. No live mainstream. I don't know what you mean by that. There's a live mainstream. There's a shorts mainstream. There's a Twitch mainstream. We're all over the place. We're on every platform. How do I think that they could make the drivers try in the sprints? I mean, it's always make it worth more points, right? In terms of the drivers, they did that though, right? You got to remember the sprints previously, they got 3 points for the win, 2 points and 1 point for like the top 3. At least they've made it the top 8 now. There's still only 8 points compared to 25 for the full Grand Prix. And I think for the teams further down, like an 8th place finish compared to a 10th place finish, that 1 point for the teams further down on the grid still matters a lot. But for the drivers towards the top end of the grid, like the swing that you get in terms of a sprint race, like if you finish ahead of somebody, like a win versus second in the Grand Prix gets you a 7-point swing. A win versus a second place in the sprint gets you a 1-point swing. And I just don't think it's that worthwhile for them. Interesting that the tyres are coming through, though. And we are seeing a little bit of a mixture. Lando Norris on the medium compound tyre, Antonelli on the soft compound tyre. So I think, you know, already we're seeing a real interchange. Maybe the soft compound tyre is thinking it's a little bit wetter and wanting that extra bit of grip, but they might run out of tyres towards the end of the sprint. It is 24 laps here in Brazil that they have to get done. The medium tyre runners kind of playing it a little bit more safe. Norris, Piastri, Alonso starting on the mediums. Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen starting on the soft compound tyres of the guys in the top 6. It's like a full alternation, actually. Lance Stroll has a fresh set of mediums that he's running for the sprint and not holding on to them for the race, which is very interesting indeed. The Aston Martin car there in 7th place. Charles Leclerc in 8th, starting on a used set of softs that he'll have used in qualifying yesterday. Completed 6 laps on them. Hadjar starting on the soft. Hulkenberg medium. Hamilton medium. Albon has a fresh set of softs that he's deciding to go for in 12th place. So he's absolutely going hell for leather, is Alex Albon. Again, using those like fresh soft compound tires or fresh medium tires when you could hold on to them for qualifying later or the race tomorrow. That's an interesting choice, because I can understand the majority of the grid going for used tires. And then Gasly all the way back to Carlos Sainz using scrubbed sets of mediums. That, like, the little line through the circle means they're a scrubbed set. And I mean, you can also see how many laps they've completed. The fresh set on Lance Stroll and the fresh set on Alex Albon, the only sets that have got 0 laps completed on them so far. Why is Tsunoda starting from the pit lane? Just taking the penalties now, resetting the car. I mean, might as well, because it was an absolutely horrendous sprint qualifying from him yesterday. When you qualify that far down, you're not really losing anything, and actually making the changes now and taking the penalty now, as opposed to trying to make the changes and take the penalty between qualifying and the real Grand Prix, plays into your favor, right? You get that benefit for the qualifying later today, and you don't have to make any changes between qualifying and the main Grand Prix where others may have to. So maybe Tsunoda deciding to actually make the changes now. Maybe he's adapted the car a touch, using it to go for like more of a dry weather conditions or wet weather conditions. We'll have to wait and see. But they've made enough changes to that car to warrant it. At Red Bull, effectively, is how that works. We are almost there, though. We're at a minute away from the start of the sprint race. If I could ask you very kindly to hit that like button on the stream, it does massively, massively help out the channel. And if you could also hit the subscribe button as well, we're on our way to 150,000 subscribers. So trying to get to 150 before the end of the season. We've only got about a month now, right? It's just the 7th is indeed the 7th of December is the final race of the season. So we will be seeing who is going to be crowned champion in under a month's time. But also, we need to get our last subscriptions in to try and get to 150,000 before the start of the next season. Let's see then. Get it loaded up. Lando Norris is going to get us underway. And the formation lap is starting to get moving and grooving. "24 laps of the circuit to be completed here for this sprint. Can Piastri jump back to his championship lead? He needs a 2-point swing over his teammate, doesn't he? Lando Norris leading the championship by just 1 point to his teammate. Max Verstappen then 36 points adrift of Lando Norris at the top of the standings. Still 116 points available to the drivers throughout the Grand Prix that we've got left, though. 2 sprint races, including this one, and 4 Grand Prix still to run. Esteban Ocon getting past turn 3 means Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz are also making their way down the pit lane. It's an interesting pit lane here. We had the fact yesterday. It covers half of the Grand Prix circuit. You come in just before turn 15. You actually come out just after turn 3. It is a very long pit lane here in Brazil. But you do also cut quite a few corners along your way as well. Kimi Antonelli just slowing down a considerable margin, actually, between Norris and Antonelli. Antonelli maybe just wanting that gap between him and Norris as they go through turn 12. Getting themselves sorted there. Norris pushed on the formation lap for some reason. He has gone fairly quickly as Lando Norris. Everybody starting to slow down as they come through turn 11 and backing up the pack into turn 10 as well. We come into the final sector. In fact, we need to change the sectors on the circuit because it doesn't really make too much sense when it comes to the Grand Prix. There we go. Grid is now forming, is indeed Piastri and Russell come to a stop. Fernando Alonso, a little bit of a gap behind as well, but is slotting in as well. As I say, a shuffle in strategies here. Not that there's going to be pit stops, but there is medium and soft compound tyres in the mix. Lando Norris waiting for Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda to make their way into the pit lane. They do indeed. Colapinto, Lawson and Ocon then. The 3 drivers yet to come to a stop. Here comes Ocon. And the green flag is waved at the rear end of the grid, the medical car taking its spot. And that means we can get underway. 5 red lights. And here we are then. We are underway for the sprint race here in Brazil. Lando Norris gets a good start and gets away. Kimi Antonelli comes across to defend from Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri's forced very wide indeed. Is George Russell going to be able to go up the inside? Not quite. Max Verstappen, though, got the better of Fernando Alonso. Verstappen up into 5th place. Charles Leclerc also has got a really good start. Lance Stroll has dropped down a couple of positions, and Lewis Hamilton up into 8th place. The Ferraris electric off the start line. Nico Hülkenberg has remained in 10th. Pierre Gasly's done well to jump up into 11th place. Isaac Hadjar has had a nightmare. He's down in 13th. Franco Colapinto's made up a couple of positions to 14th. And Ocon also getting past his teammate Ollie Behrman, as Behrman has had a bit of a disaster opening to the Brazilian Grand Prix. Tsunoda and Sainz also making their way out of the pit lane and into the mix. But Lando Norris still leads as we come around turn 11 now then. Let's have a little look at this replay. What happened to Ollie Behrman? Is there a little touch between Bortoleto and Behrman? Quite possibly there. And Liam Lawson also. Yeah, Liam Lawson sends Ollie Behrman spinning. That's what happened. And Ollie Behrman sent for a spin down towards turn 4. Liam Lawson, the driver involved. Yeah, it's a little bit more spray than I was expecting as well from the drivers out there. Unlikely to get DRS in these conditions, I would say, because actually it's a bit wetter on track than I thought it was going to be, considering all the updates to the drainage and things that they've done here in Brazil. But Lando Norris still leading Kimi Antonelli then, and Antonelli closing into the back of Lando Norris within 0.4 of a second. The Mercedes car on the soft compound tyre as well, so we'll have that tyre advantage over the mediums on Lando Norris's car. It's just whether he can hold on to the back of Lando Norris through this middle part of the lap. So they come up towards turn 10 together. The most awkward corner of the circuit, in my opinion. Carrying that speed through. Lando Norris creating a gap through that middle part of the track. The additional grip that he has got. And Kimi Antonelli's dropped to 0.9 of a second adrift of Lando Norris then. And Oscar Piastri starting to close into the back of the Italian. Piastri 0.4 of a second adrift of Antonelli. Is he going to go for a move this time around? He's catching up to the rear end of the Mercedes car, but it's too far this time around. George Russell also falling a touch away from Oscar Piastri. Is going to be outside of that 1 second range. Verstappen also the same behind George Russell. Then Fernando Alonso defending from the Ferraris in 6th place. That DRS is indeed activated. Oscar Piastri using it to just gain slightly on Kimi Antonelli. Still only just within a second of the Italian. Alex Albon fighting with Pierre Gasly for 11th place. He's within 0.3 of a second of the Frenchman and looking for an overtaking opportunity in his Williams car. Tsunoda and Sainz yet to really catch up to the back of the pack. Tsunoda 3.5 seconds adrift of Ollie Behrman after Behrman went for a spin at the beginning of this sprint race. Oscar Piastri still with 0.9 of a second gap at the DRS detection point, so we'll be able to open that rear wing down towards turn 1, trying to get that slipstream from Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli knowing that he needs to break that a little bit. Piastri actually ducks out of it to try and find some clean air behind the Italian. And Piastri then has to slot in. Lando Norris, though, has elongated his lead to 1.3 seconds at the front of this sprint race. George Russell is outside of DRS range of Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen trying to close into the rear end of George Russell's car. We've seen that those two can get very close together. Often doesn't end well for the both of them. Fernando Alonso, really slow start from both of the Aston Martins, really. Fernando Alonso did very well indeed to hold Charles Leclerc at bay. And then Lance Stroll just caught up in the mix. Lewis Hamilton with a phenomenal start in his Ferrari car gets himself up ahead of Lance Stroll and into the point scoring places. And it was Isaac Hadjar, who was basically standing still at the start. I think he got caught behind the Aston Martin as Isaac Hadjar, and then was just in a little bit of no man's land. Went left, but was covered off by Nico Hülkenberg. Went right, but Lewis Hamilton was already making his way around that side. So Isaac Hadjar just kind of caught in no man's land, unfortunately. That's why he dropped down to 13th place, and that allowed Lewis Hamilton to get the jump on everybody else up into 8th. Charles Leclerc with DRS to Fernando Alonso, still looking at the rear end of the Aston Martin car as they go down towards turn 4. DRS wide open. Is Leclerc going to go for a move this time around on the Aston Martin? Can't quite this time. Fernando Alonso remains in 6th place. Lando Norris 1.5 seconds ahead. Piastri has dropped outside of DRS range, so has Russell and Verstappen. So is Charles Leclerc the first driver within DRS? DRS is indeed enabled. Oh, in fact, shall I pop the race control messages I forgot to do? There we go. That incident between Liam Lawson and Ollie Behrman for causing a collision is under investigation as well. So that'll be interesting to see what the stewards make of that. Seemed fairly cut and dry. Liam Lawson clipping Ollie Behrman and sending him for a spin. Gabriel Bortoleto in his... Oh! And into the barriers goes Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri is out of this sprint race. He is going to be out of it, and it is Piastri, all of his own doing. A mistake through turn 3. Oh, and there's a big shunt between Hülkenberg and Colapinto. And a safety car called then. Oh, sorry, it's Gabriel Bortoleto and Franco Colapinto. The two South American drivers have come to blows very, very close to turn 2 and turn 3. Something must have happened through turn 2 or turn 3 there. So many cars spinning out. Piastri, the first of them. Then Colapinto and Hülkenberg both going there as well. 3 cars have all spun off in exactly that same position. Let's have a little look at Oscar Piastri's onboard. Comes through turn 2. Oh, clips the curb. Clips the curb. Maybe grabs a little bit of water from that inside line and knows that it is over and done with. Hülkenberg, sorry, Gabriel. Yeah, Hülkenberg, sorry. Hülkenberg into the barriers also. And Colapinto, all of their own volition. So it is Piastri, Colapinto, and Hülkenberg all making the same mistake by the looks of things. All completely separately from one another. None of the 3 came to blows with one another at all. But Oscar Piastri is out of this one then. Colapinto the same. Nico Hülkenberg did continue, but has yet to have made his way back to the pits. And the safety car has indeed been called. So Lando Norris still leading from Kimi Antonelli. George Russell now up into the podium places. Max Verstappen in 4th spot. And there is a red flag. Red flag has been waved. The session has been stopped. Franco Colapinto and Oscar Piastri's cars unable to be moved safely under safety car conditions. And possibly damage to the Tech Pro barriers there on the outside of turn 3. So both of those 2 drivers out of the Grand Prix, and the rest of the pack are going to make their way into the pits. Kimi Antonelli saying that Lando Norris hit the curb, and that then sprayed some water across the racing line, and then everybody else running behind Lando Norris actually struggling to get through that same patch. Piastri, Hülkenberg, and Colapinto, the 3 drivers that fell foul of it most. What happened to Oscar Piastri? Just going through turn 3, caught a little bit too much curb on the entry. and seemed to hit like a patch of water or something. There's a little bit of spray from that front left tire of Oscar Piastri's car, and that just sent him into the barriers, the rear end of the car making contact with the barriers on the outside of turn 3. Wasn't just him, though. Nico Hülkenberg did exactly the same thing behind him, and so did Franco Colapinto. And Max Verstappen on the radio. Not very happy at all. GP and Verstappen having their love-hate relationships as well. Gianpiero Lambiase being like, this is what I can do to help you. Max Verstappen, not overly happy with those recommendations by the sounds of things. But they do love each other, really, GP and Max Verstappen. Max saying beforehand that if GP ever did leave the Red Bull team, Max Verstappen would retire from the sport. So they must have some love behind the arguments that we often hear between them. Oscar Piastri on the curb. And as soon as he's on that little bit of water, seeing the replay again, you can see that front left tire from Oscar Piastri's car gets onto the curb, hits that little bit of a puddle possibly. And then Nico Hülkenberg does exactly the same thing. It's just those drivers that have just run that little bit closer to the curb through turn 3, they're the drivers that have then collected themselves a little bit of water. Just if you dipped your tire onto that curb, you have now caused yourself some damage to your car. Nico Hülkenberg did manage to get his car back to the pits, but the Stakes Sauber team looking at it and not overly happy with it. Franco Colapinto hit the barriers the hardest of anybody, you have to say. The Argentine struggling through turn 1 already. Carrying speed through turn 2, hits the yellow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's the biggest shunt from Franco Colapinto of the 3 drivers. And just a tiny little mistake from those 3 drivers, all 3 of them paying the price. And of course, Oscar Piastri paying the biggest price, as this will affect his championship bid for the season. Shall we have a little look at what the championship standings will read then as it stands? So let me grab the championship for you, might as well, as the red flags are still flying. Lando Norris would move up to 365 points. He would put himself 9 points clear of Oscar Piastri, which is not a ridiculous lead, but substantial at this point in the season, considering Lando Norris's form coming into the final 3 races of the year. And also we know they are tracks that Lando Norris does quite like. Not Vegas, but Qatar, we've seen him do very well there in the past. And then also Abu Dhabi, we saw him absolutely fly in Abu Dhabi last season. Oscar Piastri would remain on 356, 0 points available for him. Piastri is now out of this Grand Prix. Max Verstappen would gain an additional point, moving up onto 5 points. He would be on 326, but would still lose 3 points to Lando Norris at the top of the championship. He would be 39 points adrift of Lando Norris. And again, I think if it gets to that 40-point margin, and 39 is very, very close to 40, I think if it ever gets to the point where it's a 40-plus points, absolutely done and dusted for Max Verstappen. 39 points is as close to that as humanly possible, unless we get some half points because of the rain. This is interesting, though. With the red flag, we were expecting rain to come 20 minutes, half an hour after the sprint race. With this red flag, depending on how long it lasts for, as they still need to put together that the barrier on the outside of turn 3 there. That tire wall took a real battering from 3 different cars. So they've got quite a lot to fix when it comes to that segment of track. All of the drivers have jumped out of the car as well. So we have to wait and see. It could be interesting, though. if we do see that rain come? Do we have to see some intermediate tyres possibly come into play? Franco Colapinto's car finally being craned off of the circuit. The JCB doing its job. Oscar Piastri's car the same. Nico Hülkenberg, the other driver involved in that, I was going to say incident, but they were all separate incidents. The 3 incidents going into turn 3. Nico Hülkenberg did manage to make his way back around, but is in the pit lane, and his car is looking very worse for wear in this red flag. George Russell getting the opportunity to look at some of his lap times that he's completed so far. It will also be interesting to see if anybody decides to make any little tiny tweaks to their car, any changes in tires possibly. And when we'll get back underway. Of course, we do have the full Grand Prix qualifying later today, so it's only a couple of hours really between the two, or 3 hours between the 2 sessions. I know that they won't delay this red flag for 3 hours, but you've also got to take that into account. The longer they wait, the less the teams will have in preparation time for the full qualifying session later today. Looking at Ollie Bearman there. Bearman has dropped down to the back of the pack because he had a collision with Liam Lawson, was already very close to touching Gabriel Bortoleto, and then Liam Lawson also clips the rear left tyre for Ollie Bearman. Be interesting to see, because Liam Lawson is alongside. Oh, it's that argument again about the apex, isn't it? We're going to hear that argument about who was ahead at the apex between Ollie Bearman and Liam Lawson from the looks of things. Because Liam Lawson is like there. He's right up alongside Bearman, but has to brake earlier. So Bearman is then ahead. Where do you kind of call the apex of the corner? And Ollie Bearman not very happy about it at all. He calls it typical Lawson over the radio, does Ollie. So we'll be interested to see what the stewards make of that one. I haven't seen any updates come through. Where are the investigations tracker? Yeah, Liam Lawson and Ollie Bearman still under investigation. Bortoleto, Hülkenberg, and Colapinto will be investigated after the session for incidents. What have we got? Failing to follow race director's instructions, maximum delta time. Bortoleto, Hülkenberg, and Colapinto. I imagine that'll be a nothing, to be honest. How could that be maximum delta time? That maybe the yellow flag? No, it can't be. No idea. No idea where that has come from Bortoleto, Hülkenberg, and Colapinto. Wasn't paying enough attention. Apologies. But I don't think that will come of anything that exciting. Lawson and Bearman are the interesting ones. They could certainly could see that either way. I think, for me, it's Lawson's fault. Because Lawson is behind Bearman coming out of the corner. And Bearman does, I think, leave enough space. He kind of goes to the right-hand side of the track as he goes to the exit of turn 4. But it's whether that debate will be, like, was Liam Lawson ahead at the apex? Because Lawson's front wing was ahead of Bearman's kind of just before going into turn 4. Where do you call the apex of turn 4 is kind of how I would see that incident between Bearman and Lawson. But Oscar Piastri, the big talking point here, bottled under pressure, seeing a lot in the chat. It's just hit the wet curb, comes out of turn 2, through turn 3, just gets that little bit wider on the exit of turn 2, catches the curb on the entrance to turn 3, gets to the left-hand side of the track. You can literally see the spray of water that comes off of the curb, which has just completely set that car. The problem is he's got one tyre on the right-hand side of the car. There's still full grip, right? It's on the tarmac. He's got one tyre on the left-hand side of the track, which has lost all traction, has basically kind of aquaplaned to a touch. Has completely lost itself on the left-hand side of the car. And then that imbalance of grip between the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the car, the right-hand side has pushed the rear end of the car round, and that's just sent Oscar Piastri spinning. He was never going to be able to catch that car once it happened. And then Hülkenberg and Franco Colapinto doing almost identically the same thing. Colapinto doing it at the highest speed, though. And the biggest damage, has to be said, done to the Alpine car of the Argentine. And there are the little puddles that we can see in the divots as you go around the curbs at turn 3. Oscar Piastri is out of the car and walking his way back towards the paddock, and I'm sure does not want a camera in his face right about now. We've not got any update on the timings, have we? The track has been cleared now, so clear track, and the race will resume literally as I was saying that at 11:35. So got an 11-minute wait. Wow. Between now and the start of the sprint. So it's clearly a little bit more to be done in terms of putting those tyres and the barriers back together again. And a little bit of a review of Lando Norris's form at the moment. Lando Norris still leading this sprint. They're looking at him, looking very comfortable indeed inside of that McLaren car. Nico, it does seem like it would be a standing start to restart. So Nico Hülkenberg is being told over the radio that it's going to be a standing start for the drivers. That's interesting. So they're not going to go for a safety car restart. And we'll be all at the back, classification-wise. They're trying to work out how they will reorder him, because obviously Nico Hülkenberg is a lap down on everybody else. There will be a standing start. Max Verstappen on the softer compound tyre and slightly younger soft compound tyres. Verstappen did get the jump on Fernando Alonso at the beginning. Maybe he can get the jump on George Russell, possibly even Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli was fighting with Lando Norris hard. We'll have to wait and see. If it is a standing start once again, Verstappen being that extra place closer certainly does tantalise. And Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton also had wonderful starts in their Ferraris. So Fernando Alonso will be under pressure again going into turn 5. Alonso and Stroll had abysmal starts at the beginning of the sprint, both kind of losing positions. Lance Stroll in particular falling behind the Ferrari cars. Isaac Hadjar then getting caught up in and amongst it as well. So again, I think if we do have a standing start, we're going to see a few more drivers change positions at that start. Again, it won't be identical. I'm not just saying because the Aston Martins both started badly the first time, they'll both start badly again. But, you know, you got to look for patterns in this Formula One. Which corner did they all crash on? Turn 3. Or it's sort of the exit of turn 2, entrance to turn 3. Because turn 3 is a very long corner. Like, it is if you look at the track map there, turn 2, the exit of turn 2 basically turns into turn 3. And there isn't any straights or anything between the two of them. And turn 3, a very long looping corner. So the exit of turn 2 is where they all got it wrong. They just went a little bit wider on the exit of turn 2 and therefore clipped the curb a little bit more than you would want to in these conditions. We are, though, seeing the drivers making their way back to their cars. It is Franco Colapinto and Oscar Piastri out. And then Nico Hülkenberg, the driver who also crashed but has managed to make his way back to the grid and therefore will be able to start once more. Would I take a job as a commentator? Yeah, if you're paying, mate, I'll take it. I mean, I do get paid for this, technically. I get paid more if you hit that like button, maybe the subscribe button, possibly even a little super chat. Also, whilst we're here, if you're watching on YouTube and you have Amazon Prime, even if you're not like a Twitch person, even if you're not bothered about Twitch in any way, which to be fair, like I know a lot of people are, they just have Amazon Prime. You can subscribe to my channel on Twitch completely for free using your Twitch Prime. And all it does is take $5 away from Jeff Bezos. Why would you not want to do that, right? Take that $5 away from Jeff Bezos, put it in my pocket. Thank you very much. So if you could do that, subscribe over on Twitch. If you've got Amazon Prime, use your Twitch Prime. It massively, massively helps out the channel. And of course, we are trying to get to 150,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, Barca has subbed on the YouTube as well. A few more subscriptions coming over on YouTube. Aussie Oscar is this year's champion. He's, I don't know. He's a little, it's going to be tough now. If Lando Norris remains in the lead of this race, it's going to be 9 points the gap. So even if Piastri wins tomorrow, Lando Norris comes second, Lando Norris will still be leading the championship as well. Interesting development in the championship. Second sprint in a row that Oscar Piastri will not finish. Of course, the two McLarens come into blows in Austin, the last time we had a sprint race weekend. Am I reading this as in that or what I'm saying? 5 minutes until the restart. 5 minutes until the restart. We've got Lewis Hamilton jumping back into his Ferrari car. The drivers making their way down the grid. Thank you, Elder Jonathan, for following over on Twitch. Thank you to all of the new subscribers during this red flag period as well. Lando Norris at the front of the pack then. What website is this? This is Multiviewer. They are big help to the stream. Been supporting the stream for a little while now. Safety car lights are on, so the safety car is out and going. Order of the restart, Lando Norris at the front. Kimi Antonelli, George Russell behind. Max Verstappen will start in 4th place. Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and Lance Stroll starting in the point-scoring places. Gasly, Albon, Hadjar, Bortoletto, the 4 drivers closest to those point-scoring positions. Lawson, Ocon, Behrman, Tsunoda, Sainz, and Hulkenberg will be at the back of the pack. Oscar Piastri and Franco Colapinto no longer taking part in the rest of this sprint race. Their cars craned off the circuit. Not a huge amount of damage done to both. The bigger shunt, certainly Franco Colapinto's, but both cars will be back up and running again for qualifying later this afternoon. No terminal damage done to either of those two. Luckily for Oscar Piastri, who is going to need a big showing later on today to maintain his championship hopes for the season. And this is an opportunity now for Lando Norris to really turn the screw a little bit more in this final stint of the season. 3.5 minutes away from the start, or the restart of this sprint. And looking like a standing start is now confirmed. Haven't seen anything to confirm otherwise. So standing start it will be. And I'm keeping an eye on the weather radar as well, because we were told to expect rain after the sprint race. But now that it's been red flagged, and red flagged for a considerable amount of time as well, 11 minutes ago was when we were told when the race would restart. So we're sort of waiting to see. Two minutes, 49 seconds to go. Who's our money on then? I think Max could do something here on the restart, you know. He got a really good launch and ran up alongside Fernando Alonso. Got ahead right at the start. Max Verstappen do that again, this time alongside George Russell. He's on that right-hand side of the track again. George Russell, though, moving up into 3rd place. Antonelli and Norris staying where they are in 2nd and 1st. Kamikaze, work your magic. Good gracious. Max channeled in a 2016. He's certainly going to have a run at it. Max Verstappen will be able to at least see the rear wing of Lando Norris going into turn 1, being just a row behind now rather than 2. But Verstappen knows he really needs Lando Norris to, well, realistically, join Oscar Piastri at this point. At some point this weekend, he needs both of the McLarens to have a problem or two. Oscar Piastri has thrown Max Verstappen half a bone. Not quite. Nico Hülkenberg then, unlapping himself. Well, wasn't quite lapped by Lando Norris, but did complete less of a lap, getting himself out of the way of Lando Norris, because he would have been at the front of the queue, because when the red flag dropped, he was still making his way back to the pits after his collision with the barriers. So he would have actually been sitting first in the pit lane, despite being last in the running order. So Nico Hülkenberg has to do a lap so that he can move out of the way of Lando Norris at the front of the pack and actually rejoin behind Carlos Sainz at the back of the pack. And being let to do that, Nico Hülkenberg coming around turn 14, as we've got about 45 seconds before the rest of the cars are going to get back underway. Hülkenberg completing his extra lap of racing, puts him back on the lead lap of racing is the best way to describe it. But Fernando Alonso looking very, very just sort of ready to run inside of that Aston Martin car. And then looking at Lando Norris at the front of the pack. Had a little bit of an escape away, did Lando Norris. Was looking very comfortable in front of Kimi Antonelli. Was under pressure for the first couple of laps or so, but the Italian just wasn't able to live with the pace of the McLaren. Lando Norris, though, has to do it all over again. As we get the restart underway, the safety car moving ahead. Max Verstappen onto the medium tyre. Both Mercedes onto the medium tyre as well. This will be interesting. Once they come out of the pit lane, we'll be able to see who has moved onto which tyres. Lando Norris has gone onto the soft compound tyre. Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen onto the medium compound tyre. Fernando Alonso has switched onto the soft. So everybody's making a little bit of a change around and possibly not wanting to use those scrub set of tyres. I mean, it makes sense that you change your tyres during the stop. Leclerc and Hamilton both now on medium tyres together. Lance Stroll on a set of soft compound tyres. Is it a rolling start? Don't think so. Should be a... Oh, no, it is a rolling start. Rolling start procedure. Apologies. Don't know why we didn't get confirmation of that beforehand. But it is a rolling start. And a bit of a rotation. Lots of drivers swapping their tyres around. Bortoletto, Lawson, Ocon, Behrman, Tsunoda, Sainz, Hülkenberg just making their way out of the pits. Hülkenberg coming around turn 3 now. And Lando Norris is going to get us rolling once more. And Norris just closing up the pack behind him. And here we are then. We're going to get back underway. 17 laps of racing. 16 once Lando Norris crosses the start-finish line. And here we are then. Rolling start is confirmed by race control. Lando Norris now has the opportunity to go for it when he wants to. The safety car has come in. Lando Norris rolling around towards turn 15. And still Lando Norris waits until now. Lando Norris goes towards the start-finish line, crosses it. 16 laps left of racing to go. And George Russell and Kimi Antonelli are side-by-side going in towards turn 1. Fernando Alonso's also gone very wide. Verstappen goes super deep into turn 1, and Verstappen's going to have to defend from Alonso. Alonso then has the jump on Verstappen going down towards turn 4. Verstappen moves to one side of the track to try and defend from Alonso. Alonso, though, on those medium tyres, on those soft compound tyres, sorry. And Max Verstappen just about holding on. Although Verstappen still alongside Fernando Alonso as they come through turn 5. Verstappen will not. Oh my God, Alonso will not give up that position. But Alonso just about slots in behind Verstappen without them touching one another. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton have also come around in 6th and 7th place, and Lance Stroll still in that final point-scoring place. Pierre Gasly in 9th place, Albon up into 10th, Hadjar 11th, Bortoletto in 12th. And everybody having a little bit of a shuffle around. It was Antonelli and Russell side by side. Max Verstappen went super deep into turn 1, which opened the door for Fernando Alonso to at least have a little look. And then Verstappen was side by side with Alonso throughout that entire first sector, really, even into the second sector. And now Max Verstappen has dropped 3 seconds behind the leader of this Grand Prix, Lando Norris. George Russell has DRS range to Kimi Antonelli ahead, but DRS only just enabled. And George Russell looking at Kimi Antonelli. He's going to go for a move. Not quite this time around at Mercedes. It's getting very close between Antonelli and Hamilton, isn't it? Feels like George Russell behind his teammate once again. Of course, was stuck behind Antonelli for a long period of the Mexican Grand Prix and was not happy about it. Russell behind his teammate once more. I wonder if Russell will be on the radio again asking to move past his teammate. Or this time around, he's just going to accept that he needs to do it out on the racetrack. Lando Norris continuing in first place and outside of DRS range of Kimi Antonelli behind. George Russell has DRS to his teammate. Max Verstappen still falling adrift in 4th place on the medium tyres now. Fernando Alonso on the softs has not been able to quite hold on to the back of the Red Bull and is actually under pressure from Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc is going to make a move on Fernando Alonso, and Alonso holding on to that position through turn 1. Very tight between the two of them, but Alonso holds on to the position and Charles Leclerc has to slot in behind. Hamilton is also just behind his teammate Lance Stroll, sandwiching the Ferraris with the 2 Aston Martin cars. Kimi Antonelli just goes quickest of anybody. The 112.1 from the Italian there. Charles Leclerc leading Hamilton, fighting with Alonso, still within half a second, trying to close that gap through the middle sector. Hold on to the back of the Aston Martin. Needs to use that DRS advantage as well, coming around the final couple of corners now. Lando Norris is going to come across the start-finish line to start lap 12 of this sprint race. And Lando Norris still comfortably ahead. Kimi Antonelli also escaping away from his teammate, was 0.5 of a second quicker than George Russell last lap. So Antonelli now has a nice gap to George Russell behind, and Fernando Alonso once again under pressure, although Lewis Hamilton is locked up behind in his Ferrari car. Is Lance Stroll able to take advantage? Not this time around. Maybe down towards turn 4, Lance Stroll is going to have the run at Lewis Hamilton, is going to have the DRS wide open. It's a real tussle between the Aston Martin and Ferrari cars. Pierre Gasly waiting in the background to try and pick up a point for the Alpine team. And a huge lockup from Fernando Alonso at the restart. And Verstappen went super wide to not make contact with the 2 Mercedes cars. George Russell going very slowly indeed through the apex, trying to go for a different line. And Max Verstappen evading George Russell through turn 1 is why he went so wide. Lando Norris leading this sprint race. Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen are top 4. Not looking very tight between them at all. It's Alonso Leclerc, the first real battle on the grid. Leclerc still within DRS range of the Aston Martin ahead. Hamilton has fallen a touch behind, but catching back up to his teammate to be back within DRS. Carlos Sainz leading the... Nico Hülkenberg is there as well. I was going to say, just trundling around at the back of the grid, Carlos Sainz, but Gasly and Albon, 9th and 10th place. Hadjar is frustratingly down in 11th. He'll rue that restart. Lando Norris on the radio. The wind is getting gustier. Well, the wind just needs to blow some rain clouds in this direction. We were expecting rain at some point this afternoon in Interlagos. It's looking grayer above the head of Lewis Hamilton as we watch the onboard from the Ferrari. The wind starting to build up and change direction as well. What happened to Piastri? Made a mistake into turn 3, sent his McLaren car spinning and collided with the barriers on the outside of turn 3. His race done and dusted. Lewis Hamilton closing the gap to Charles Leclerc now. Leclerc closer than he has been before to the back of Fernando Alonso as they come through the middle part of the lap once again. Charles Leclerc certainly getting closer and closer to the rear end of the Spaniard's car, but not quite able to make a move yet. Lando Norris still leading. No rain on the radar at the moment for me, but still 10 laps left to run as Lando Norris starts lap 15 of this Grand Prix now. Antonelli, Russell, Verstappen behind. No real opportunity to move any kind of positions there. Charles Leclerc, the closest competitor to Fernando Alonso. Will it be this time around? Charles Leclerc, DRS again, just has to follow the Aston Martin through turn 1 once more. Just doesn't quite have the straight line speed advantage as Charles Leclerc, even with the DRS open. Let's see. Fernando Alonso. Ooh. Charles Leclerc moves out to the left just for a moment and then thinks again, doesn't make that maneuver yet. Charles Leclerc slotting back behind Alonso once again for the middle part of the lap. Hamilton and Stroll still sit inside the points scoring positions. Gasly, Albon, Hadjar, Bortoleto, Lawson, Ocon, Behrman, Tsunoda, Sainz and Hülkenberg still running outside of the point scoring places. Oscar Piastri and Franco Colapinto, the two drivers out of this Grand Prix. Both separate incidents going in towards turn 3. Just, three drivers in a row colliding with the barriers. First, Oscar Piastri hitting the puddles on the entrance to turn 3, lost the rear end of his McLaren car. Then he was followed by Nico Hülkenberg, who did exactly the same thing and hit the barriers on the outside of turn 3 as well, who then also was followed by Franco Colapinto. 3 separate incidents, all 3 cars, though, finding the same fate and hitting the barriers on the outside of the turn 3 corner. Nico Hülkenberg, the only car who survived. Piastri and Colapinto out. Hülkenberg, though, at the back of the pack. And you can tell there's certainly some damage to that Stake Sauber car, falling quite far adrift of the back of the pack. Hülkenberg now 2 seconds behind Carlos Sainz in 18th place. Talking of that kind of gap, Max Verstappen is now 2 seconds adrift of George Russell in 3rd. Fernando Alonso then 5 seconds back from that. And Pierre Gasly saying on the radio, need that Ferrari to get past Fernando Alonso. He's stuck in a DRS train, is Pierre Gasly, and not very happy about it. Alonso is holding up Leclerc and Hamilton and Stroll, and Gasly also in that DRS train behind. And let's see if Leclerc can get past Alonso. Leclerc does have a little look at Fernando, but once more through turn 1, isn't close enough to make a move. And a little bit of a squirm outside of turn 2 as well, as Esteban Ocon is fighting with Liam Lawson ahead of him. Lawson already has collided with one Haas today. Investigation is going to be looked at after Ocon is going to go DRS round the outside of turn 4. Here comes Esteban Ocon on Liam Lawson. He's going to collide with the other Haas car. No, Lawson gives up that position. And Esteban Ocon moves up into 13th place. Lando Norris slotting into first place, but now struggling with the rear end of that McLaren car. Is still a second ahead of Kimi Antonelli. If Antonelli can maybe just find a 10th or so, though, get himself within DRS range. And a little bit of a lock-up from Kimi Antonelli into turn 1 is not what he needs if he's going to try and close into the back of Lando Norris as those soft compound tyres start to fall off. Max Verstappen also on the medium tyre in 4th place. Looking at Charles Leclerc now. Can this be the lap that he has a go at Fernando Alonso? No. Stays behind Alonso even more. Fernando Alonso continuing to defend like a lion in 5th place. Charles Leclerc still within half a second of the Aston Martin, and Pierre Gasly still asking if Charles Leclerc could get a move on with making that overtake happen. And here we go then. Pierre Gasly closing into the back of Lance Stroll once more. Just needs Lance Stroll to fall out of that DRS range. Has fallen outside of that DRS range, I think, Lance Stroll. So now we're going to see if Pierre Gasly can make that move. It's a few laps later than he would have wanted to, but he was stuck in that DRS train behind Fernando Alonso. Leclerc and Hamilton both ruining the rear end of this Aston Martin car. And Aston Martin doing everything they can at this point to hold on to their double point scoring finish. Alonso holding on to 5th, and Lance Stroll now defending from Pierre Gasly behind to try and finish in 8th place. Albon has fallen a mile away. He's 4.5 seconds adrift of Gasly. Is a real kind of bundle of cars. Norris, Antonelli, Russell in a little gap of their own, although all 4 of those cars separated by over a second. Then Alonso, Leclerc, Hamilton in a little trio with Stroll and Gasly close behind. Then it is a huge gap to Alex Albon in 10th place outside of the points. Bortoleto and Hadjar stuck behind Albon and trying their best to get past that Williams car with no move being available to them. Ocon and Behrman have both been able to get past Lawson. Lawson now trying to defend from Tsunoda. Tsunoda ahead of Sainz, and then Hülkenberg in his damaged Stake Sauber car running around right at the back of the pack. Isaac Hadjar looking at the back of the Brazilian Gabriel Bortoleto's car. Not able to do it this time around, though. Similar to what Pierre Gasly was saying, because Bortoleto is stuck behind Albon, Hadjar, who also does seem to have more pace, isn't able to get past the Brazilian, who's still within DRS range of Albon ahead. Kimi Antonelli, though, has closed into DRS range of Lando Norris over the last couple of laps, and maybe those soft compound tyres that Lando Norris decided to swap onto were not the best of choices. Lando Norris is going to need a little bit of extra battery possibly to defend from Kimi Antonelli here. Antonelli actually using that DRS to within a couple of tenths of a second and has cut a really big chunk out of Lando Norris last time around. Lando Norris with a 1:13.6, Antonelli with a 1:13 dead. The Italian absolutely flying now with that DRS open. It was within 0.4 of a second of Lando Norris as they go down towards turn 4. Turn 4. Norris really needs a solid middle sector here. It's where you can build up that gap through turn 9 and turn 10, where it can be awkward to follow in the dirty air. Kimi Antonelli, though, if he can stay just under the rear wing of the McLaren car through turn 10 and carry that speed and momentum through 11 into 12, could be looking at Antonelli having a go and trying to fight. Lando Norris under pressure now then. Antonelli with the DRS once again. 0.8 of a second is the gap as they come through turn 14. DRS is open for Kimi Antonelli. Gaining and gaining on Lando Norris. Gets to within 0.4 of a second once again, but can't quite get alongside into turn 1. Needs a big launch through turn 3. And Charles Leclerc also looking at a move on Fernando Alonso. It's the closest that the Ferrari has been for a little while. And Charles Leclerc alongside Fernando Alonso as they come through the first part of the lap. Coming down towards turn 3, then Charles Leclerc will have the DRS to Fernando Alonso ahead. And Leclerc moves to the left-hand side of the track. He's going to have the inside line as Charles Leclerc. And Leclerc finally gets that move done on Fernando Alonso up into 5th place. And Alonso down into 6th. Lewis Hamilton next in line to have a go at the back of the Aston Martin car. And he is very closely in line as well. Just a couple of tenths of a second adrift of the Spaniard. Lando Norris, though, under pressure from Kimi Antonelli all of a sudden. Antonelli closer this time as he comes out of the middle sector. Closes the gap on Lando Norris, but Norris has found 0.1 of a second or so. And Lando Norris defending very well indeed as Kimi Antonelli has those DRS advantage, but isn't able to get anywhere close to Lando Norris this time around. Was 0.4 of a second adrift through turn 1 last time around. 0.6 of a second adrift in this one, so is nowhere near close enough. So we're on the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli realistically is only going to have one more shot at it. Needs an absolutely perfect middle sector. Fernando Alonso defending from Lewis Hamilton as Hamilton got enough to get past Alonso as well on the final lap of this sprint race. Lando Norris still leads from Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli's lost 0.1 or so in the middle part of the lap. Think it's going to be pretty tough for Kimi Antonelli to be able to do it this time around. But you never know. Maybe he gets a perfect launch around turn 11 and into 12 we go. Antonelli 1.4 seconds ahead of Russell. Doesn't need to worry about his teammate behind. Trying to slingshot his way around turn 12 and catch up to the back of that McLaren car. Lando Norris comes around turn 15. They start the final lap of this sprint race then. Lando Norris still leading from Antonelli. The gap down to 0.4 of a second once again as they come through turn 1. Kimi Antonelli knows this is his one and only chance that he's going to get at winning this sprint race. If Lando Norris can get through turn 4, it feels done and dusted. Antonelli, DRS open. Is he going to go for a lunge up the inside? No, he doesn't this time around. Lando Norris up the hill towards turn 6, and that's that done and dusted. Fernando Alonso also holding on to... And there's a big crash for Bortoleto. Bortoletto's into the barriers. Was battling with Albon and Hadjar, and I think maybe clipped Alex Albon as Albon also tumbles down the order as well. But Bortoleto, a big shunt for the Brazilian at his home Grand Prix. And the race is going to end with double yellow flags being waved in that first sector. Lando Norris still holding on to the lead from Kimi Antonelli. Yellow flags being waved for turn 14 and 15 as well. So Bortoleto says he is okay over the radio. But Lando Norris is going to cruise to a victory here, and 8 crucial points for Lando Norris, which puts him now 9 points ahead of Oscar Piastri in the championship standings. Antonelli and Russell take the other 2 podium places. Max Verstappen comes home in 4th spot. Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton and Pierre Gasly pick up the points for Ferrari, Aston Martin and Alpine get themselves a point on the board. Lance Stroll also takes the checkered flag just outside of the point scoring places. Hadjar, Ocon, Behrman, Lawson, Tsunoda, Sainz, Hülkenberg and Albon finished the Grand Prix. Bortoleto, the final casualty right at the end there. And it was a big shunt for a Gabriel Bortoleto. Luckily, he is okay, but that is going to be a big fix for the Stakes Sauber team to have to do. They're going to have to put together both of the Stakes Sauber cars. Damage to Nico Hulkenberg's car as well that he was able to race with. But Bortoleto joins Oscar Piastri and Franco Colapinto being out of this race. And Bortoleto will be classified technically because he was on the final lap of the Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri, though, went a little bit wide through turn 2, just got onto the damp patch at the entrance to turn 3, lost that McLaren car, and lost himself even more points to his teammate in the championship. Franco Colapinto also making the exact same mistake Oscar Piastri did on the exact same lap, and also going into the barriers at turn 3. Caused a red flag that we stopped for. We didn't quite get the rain in the sprint that we were expecting. Oh my goodness, that is a huge shunt from Gabriel Bortoleto. Just loses control of that Stakes Sauber car. He must have just hit a wet patch. Think he's just going for a move on Albon. Possibly gets onto the paint on the right-hand side, or a little puddle on the left-hand side of the track. I have no idea. Gabriel Bortoleto just seems like it just completely and utterly fell apart. And Alex Albon then picking up pieces of that Sauber car. Luckily wasn't collected with it. Oh my goodness me. Huge shunt from Gabriel Bortoleto. Luckily is okay and out of the car. DRS open as well. At the highest speed, and Isaac Hadjar also nearly collected with it. Albon just about missed it. Could have been really, really bad if Alex Albon had also been collected by it, because Bortoleto's car leaves the track, collides with the barriers on the inside of turn 1. Not even getting towards turn 1, on the inside of the pit straight, really. And then nothing Bortoleto could do once he'd lost control of that car. It's going to be a big, big job for the Stakes Sauber team to put that car back together again. But we will leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you all coming around. We will be back live once again in, a couple of hours' time now. After the delay, we'll be back in a couple of hours for the qualifying for the full Grand Prix. As you leave, I could ask you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. And if you haven't seen the video, or even if you have seen the video that I made on Thursday, it's the first link in the description. Hit that link. It's literally 10 minutes. Just watch it all the way through. That really does support the channel more than anything else that you could do. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. See you soon. And I will see you, in a couple of hours' time. Have a wonderful, wonderful break. I'll see you for qualifying.